So last time when we wrapped up, we were talking about how attributes or variables define segmentation. And so some of the variables I'm interested in are things like geography, the demographics, the psychographics, and that's personality. Uh, Essentially, what are the things that drive who we are? And also it could be industrial, that if I'm selling to businesses, what industry segments are they in? Who are the end users? And so when I look at customers, I'm interested in who they are, which are descriptors, bases, why are they using my product, and finally behaviors, what are they going to use it for? So who they are, their age, their income, why are they going to use it, why do they prefer my product, well, what lifestyles do they have, what needs do they have, and what are they going to use it for? Are they responsive to what I do? How is it that they go about using it? And organizations are different than individuals, and so you have different parameters. But these are the customer variables and define who they are. Psychographics, which is about their personality. By understanding who these people are personality-wise, I can connect better with them. I can understand their viewpoint, which allows me to communicate better with them. And finally, I can see if there are any kind of overriding themes that define who they are to better communicate with them. Now, in terms of psychographics, what defines us is called the Big Five traits. And those traits include how open are you? How curious are you? Are you conscientious? How extroverted are you? Are you extroverted or introverted? How do you value getting along with others? And finally, how neurotic are you? And let's face it, older people and younger people are neurotic in different ways. There's something called the VAL system where they actually take data and get statistics on how people think, what they believe in, and they get the percentages of the population. And it's called the values, attitude, and lifestyles chart. So this data actually exists. In terms of the steps of figuring out segmentation, well, first I need a strategy. I need some kind of theory of why I think this segment exists or why these variables are important. Then I could pick out those variables, go out and gather the data through surveys or interviews or whatever, analyze what the data says. And then based on analyzing that data, can I partition it in a certain way so I can come up with segments and then go ahead and pick out and target those segments. And so the thing about segmentation profiles, it's different for every application. You don't need to have all the variables represented. For example, if there's not a dependence on location, then you don't have to put location in there as a variable. But what's the important thing about a segment is that within the segment it's homogeneous, meaning people are pretty much the same. And if they're and outside of it I want it to be heterogeneous, meaning mixed up of different kinds of people. And so in terms of gathering data, I can look at data that already exists. I can go out and get data through like surveys. My databases can become quite big. And the thing about this data is I can combine segments together and give it a name, or I can separate it. In terms of the variables and how do I go about finding those variables and examining it, we've already looked at perceptual maps, how we can keep segmenting. Mapping trees, and that's I come up with one variable and I just keep splitting it. Bullseye diagram, layers, what exists within another. I could just put it in tables. And conjoint analysis is trying to figure out which variables are important and which aren't, or there are clusters of data that I can look at. Segmentation of trees, this is an example. The TEM department once was thinking about doing, and they still might, is a co-op program. And that means that during the summers you go work for a company and get paid. And then you stay an extra year and you go to your company for 6 months where you pretty much do your master's thesis. And so after 5 years you get your bachelor's and your master's. So who are the people who would be interested in a co-op? Well, community colleges, high school students, and undecideds. And then within community colleges, you have the county, you have STEM, so on and so forth. So you can keep breaking these up, and that's the trees approach. Bullseye is within layers. For example, if I want to look at hotels, luxury hotels sit within brand hotels, sit within discount hotels, and overall all hotels. Crosstab is I actually get statistics, and I look at if I can see big clusters, like high percentages of people, that could be a segment. And so it's based on questions. I can figure out what variables are important, like end user, application, benefits. And then I can look at a whole bunch of different industries and just fill that table out so I can compare what my opportunities are and what are better fits for me. Conjoint analysis is a statistical technique that tells me how customers value attributes. And as you can imagine, if I can figure out what variables are important to my customer, I could use it for segmentation, I could use it for product, I could figure out in terms of pricing what things I should emphasize. And there's also cluster analysis, and that's that when I get all this, like if I go out and get a bunch of survey data, and I ask a bunch of questions, well, I could put those on different axes, and what you can see is that certain data points will start to clump together. And because they're so close together, it means there's a potential for a market there. And the way we calculate these clusters is by these techniques. You can read about it on your own. And clusters can have hierarchy, meaning groups exist within groups. So what if I'm interested in gamers? I've got dweebs, geeks, and nerds, male and female. Well, I could say the male and female geeks form a group that I call socially isolated. Geeks are socially challenged, and the nerds are people who are introverted. And if I combine all of them, I can define that as core gamers. I could take any one of those parts and call it a segment, but they exist within each other. So it's called a hierarchy. And how do I evaluate segmentation? How do I know that I have good segments? And that's for the next video.